Hi, Casey. How are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm good. I know last time we talked about the movement between you being home to going into college and being away from family and your sisters. And I know you were talking about stressors academically and athletically and how everything could be overwhelming. And we discussed some coping strategies you could work on to help reduce the stress. So, how's that been going?
It's definitely gotten a bit better. I think just kind of addressing, what are those things that are tending to contribute to all that stress that I've been feeling. As being a student athlete and entering and being in my senior year, I thought it would have been much easier academically, but I mean, honestly, with kind of the weight kind of weighing down on me of where am I moving after graduation and stuff, that's obviously just been something on my mind. But academically, it has gotten a bit easier just to acknowledge what those stressors are, and then of course just the class load and balancing that with lacrosse and whatnot. So overall, I think I'm taking the steps in the right direction right now.
Okay, and some of the things that we were talking about were coping strategies. So just some more recommendations to make it easier because I know senior year is overwhelming, about to move on and do things after college. But I recommend maybe you could get a planner or make a schedule of things you have to do in order so you're not stressed out. So
yeah, I think right now, so just with my class load and everything, I know I've taken the steps of on my computer, kind of listing down what is my class schedule, and within that class, what are the due dates that I have approaching and whatnot. In terms of lacrosse schedule and what my sports schedule is, it kind of gets a little bit difficult because I don't know if I mentioned it in the last meeting, but I am a part of different clubs and committees around campus, which tend to be kind of hindering a bit just because the times that we meet are very late, so it kind of takes into the time that I could be doing much other things like schoolwork and whatnot. So it's just those extra responsibilities outside of it that I find a hard time to keep track of. But then again, the more I keep referring back to the agenda that I have sorted out, that's when I'm able to keep track of everything that I have coming up.
Yeah, also, do you feel stressed out academically? I know everything's coming up. Have you thought about maybe joining, a study group or joining study hall just to plan out everything better?
I hadn't considered it, and it's funny that you mention it because I was looking, for opportunities around campus to kind of get involved. Within a study group, luckily, in our library, we have, the hours that would allot me the time to actually get some studying done, and work on some of, any assignments that are approaching. I do have a group that was willing to meet weekly. They are kind of from different, some of them are in the same major as me. There's some that are not. But they're just some other, people involved that, we're looking to do the same thing. So,
yeah, I think that would be a good way to connect with your peers and even building relationships with your professor. You could talk to them about SI meetings. You could do in Kirk or whatever, and then there's other options throughout school. If you reach out, if you're specifically psychology, there could be groups and tutors. So if you're feeling stressed out, they could help you even not even with studying, but even with planning out your finals and preparing you for that, just allotting times to everything so you're not too overwhelmed on one day taking a final.
Mm-hmm.
But have you planned out the days of your finals? I know that can be really stressful.
Surprisingly, the finals schedule I found to be extremely difficult because what you're saying, kind of building that, going back to what you were saying of building that relationship with your professor, I feel I've done an effective job at doing that and actually being on a high communicating level with my professors, especially being an athlete. There's a lot of times, and on top of also the other clubs and committees I'm a part of, like I need to have that communication with them in order to kind of like keep myself in track. And a lot of the times, whenever, there's an assignment coming up or whatnot, I'm able to like reach out to them and kind of get that help that I need. In terms of finals, it does get a little bit tricky just because our final schedule is all over the place. Like, you're used to a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, or you're used to your Tuesday, Thursday schedule, whatever it is. But then it's like once you get to finals, it's all just like a cluster. Like you don't like it's not typically on the same days, or at the same times as well. So that was a little bit difficult, and that's something that I do intend on adding to like my planner, my notes that I have jotted down, because of just the way the schedule is. And I know this week I've been like kind of stressing out a bit with like what finals do I have? I don't want to miss the times. Like, I don't want to be late. Am I prepared? Like, do I have the materials? Just kind of all of that is what I think is like weighing down on me more, like right here, right now, is just preparing for finals week.
And I know you said you were part of like a few clubs and like involved with athletics. I know that can be just more stressors added on top of academics, but are like your coaches and like the people that are in charge of clubs, are they like flexible with your class schedule?
So luckily they are. One of the committees I'm on is our SAC committee, which is designated like to the student athletes of our school. For that one, I'm a part of our e-board. So with that, in the beginning of the school year, whenever we're trying to figure out meetings and stuff, it all revolves around athletes' schedules. And specifically for our e-board, like, not only do we meet with, our whole SAC committee once a month, but then on top of that, once every week, we're either meeting with, the head advisor of the committee, or we're meeting with the athletic director. And that can sometimes be like smack dab, like right in the middle of the day. So that's definitely something where I'm like, oh, like I just finished class. Oh wait, like I have to head to a meeting now. So that one is definitely something that I always struggle to remember those meetings unless somebody else from the e-board is reaching out to me. But in terms of like our, like when we're meeting with the SAC committee, for our monthly meetings, when we meet with them, it's usually based off of like when we have the openings, which typically we don't follow those openings just because our meetings tend to like run way longer than they should. So usually there's, every month we're meeting somewhere between 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And that gets to be like a little bit difficult. And it's not even just on me. Like I know from other like members and like reps on SAC, it gets a bit difficult just because it's like, okay, like we're all student athletes. We all have homework. We all have had practice, like whatnot. We just want to get home. So it also takes like the effectiveness out of the meeting in some ways. But that's just one of those other things where it's like, with our head advisor for that committee, it's just, I think they understand that like, we're tired by the time we meet, and like we do have these other responsibilities of being a student while being an athlete. So they are flexible when it comes to class schedules, but in terms of like, it's kind of like it's just like being an athlete and like keeping that scholarship. Like you have to be eligible. You have to remain eligible with your academics and whatnot, and balancing those responsibilities in order to stay in this committee. So that's also like one of those extra things that kind of like are hanging over your head a little bit, because you're like, well, shoot, if I don't keep my grades up for this, I have my scholarship at risk, and I have my position being on this committee at risk as well. So it's just one of those other things. But with my coach, her and my assistant coach, they are very well at like communicating with, me and my other teammates about our grades and like about our schedules. Usually like our schedule doesn't really form for practices until our practice schedule is like it's designed to be like early in the mornings or like in the afternoons, depending on what season we're in. But then, when it comes to time to pick our classes and whatnot, that's when it kind of comes into play of like, okay, well, you had to work it around, your practice schedule. So yes, there is flexibility. Like if there's classes that you absolutely need and like there is no other option but to go to that class, obviously they'll, give you the time to like leave practice early or whatever it is. But just one of those things where you kind of have to figure out, all the timing of everything and making sure it works accordingly.
Yeah.
So.
Do you feel like you're on top of all of your schoolwork and athletics? I know we were talking about schoolwork a lot, but athletically, like you said, you have to have your scholarships. You have to be eligible to like have your scholarship and pass your classes, get good grades, time management, like you were mentioning. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you're falling behind at all? And if you were falling behind, do you feel like you have someone you could go to, or like, you know what I mean? Do you feel like you could like find a reliable like source to help you out with that?
Mm-hmm. So since the last time we met, I know we had like talked about that time management, and I did want to make it like a goal of mine to start to get a hold of that. And like I said, relating back to the beginning of this meeting, investing in that time to like kind of break down like my whole schedule so I can refer back to it. That's definitely helped me a good bit, just because, in the middle of this semester, I wasn't doing well in some places that I'd like to be doing. So that was kind of like, I don't consider myself to be like a bad student. I do struggle in some areas to like get the grades that I have. But that was like one of those things where I'm like, I noticed that, approaching the end of the semester, that was probably one of the bigger improvements was that time management. Because I started like figuring out, okay, like when should I work on like this assignment for this class? When do I have a meeting? When do I have this? When do I have that? That was definitely one of the biggest things. And relating back to like building those relationships with professors, I think that's been the biggest positive thing for me this semester, was having that relationship with those professors that, admitting to them like, look, I'm struggling in this part of our class. Like, could you align me with somebody in the class that, would be able to steer me in the right direction? And for instance, in one of my classes, a part of my Tuesday, Thursday schedule, I had approached one of my professors about it. It's one of my longer classes. It was a 3-hour class, and I met with her when we were taking a break in the middle of the class and asked her, I just don't understand this concept. I can't wrap my head around it. I'm trying really hard to understand, but it's just not clicking. Mm-hmm. And the person that I had ultimately been reaching out to up to that point in that class, she had informed me, she was like, look, she struggles with that as well. So I think you should instead reach out to, this classmate instead. So I was like, okay. And, I got all of her information. She had approached me in class, or at the end of our class. And when I got that information from her, I mean, she was definitely, for those classes, because those are the classes that go towards my minor, she definitely helped me out a great deal. And it helped me turn things around this semester with those classes.
Yeah, I think it's good that you have peers you can go to if you need help. It's always good to have like a few students in each class you can reach out to, even if you just have a question about something, or if you need to like get together and work something out. And I think it's good that you can talk to your professors about like not understanding something, all the way to having to maybe like schedule a test at a different time due to like having all these meetings, athletics, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But leaning more towards what we discussed last session, we talked about like family a little bit and how you felt obviously overwhelmed coming from home to here. Even as your 4th year in college, it's still stressful leaving home and like not having like the comfort of your family here, like right by your side when you come home. Mm-hmm. But how do you think that's been going? Like, have you been still leaving some time to like be in contact with like your sisters and your family, and like not like still feeling connected, like you aren't too distant?
Mm-hmm. So I think this year was probably like it was a kind of odd year because I have 3 older sisters, and a lot of the times when I'm down here at school, there's a lot of big life events going on. Like, we have a big family. And luckily, or like fortunately enough, one of my sisters, she had gotten married during this semester that I was here. I was able to fly back for the wedding, luckily. That was a good kind of like taste of just like being home, especially towards like the middle of the semester, which was really nice. And kind of sharing that weekend with them. And then coming back, of course, like it sucks. Like it sucks leaving your family. I think everybody, for the most part, would probably feel that way. And it sucks. It sucks being away from them. And like I said, like right now, like my sisters, especially, like I'm like best. They're my best friends. So like it's hard, kind of leaving them knowing what events are like approaching for them, and like thinking in my head like, okay, well, like I don't want to miss out on any more. So like then I'm just looking forward to like the next time that I go home. And then fast forward a little bit, when we had our Thanksgiving break, you know, spent the week home with my family, which was really nice. And then, you know, every year you go to Thanksgiving break, you come back, you finish classes, finals, whatever, and then you go back home for like a month. So I think since the timing of our last meeting and then what has transpired since then till now, it's done me good to like see my family, and like I have, you know, done a better job as well as they have, of just kind of like staying in contact and kind of like keeping me in the loop, because I think that's my biggest thing is like I hate being out of the loop. Like I hate coming home and it feels like so much has changed. But I think that was a big like improvement from the last time we had spoken about my family, and like kind of that like homesickness in a way was like just trying to stay in touch as often as possible, whether it's like calling my mom a certain amount of times throughout the week, or, you know, texting my sisters or whatever it is. Just kind of like staying in the loop, I think, was like my biggest issue.
Yeah, I know we touched a lot on current like stressors, but obviously you're seniors, so you're about to move on, take your next step in life. I know like things such as like graduation, like finishing your credits and all that, you only have one semester left, could be overwhelming but still exciting. Do you feel like, is there anything you already feel like in the future that's like a stressor, such as like moving out, where you're gonna live, like graduating, like finding a job? Like I know there's a lot of that going on. Do you feel like any of that's like overwhelming like right now?
I think that's been like the biggest battle in my own head that I've been dealing with, because of course when it comes to graduation, on top of like the pressures of like, you know, finishing out, getting the grades you want, looking into, you know, like my aspiration is to go into a master's program. And then, of course, looking into where those master's programs are available and applying and then getting in. And, you know, am I going to go back home, or am I going to stay down here? Or, you know, am I going to look to get a job first and like take a year off? Like, it's been a battle within my own head. And then on top of it, like, you know, my friends and like what they're doing is also like, okay, well, like, should I be doing that? Like, and it's hard because it's like, I know that I'm supposed to be like, everybody's on their own path and like everybody's going to go like every which way they want.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it also is too like that combined pressure of like, okay, well, like if they're doing that, like I need to figure out something. And I think right now, like that's my biggest just battle right now, is kind of figuring out where I'm going after graduation. I think that's like the first step. I need to figure out like, am I going to go home? Am I going to stay here in Florida, or am I going to, you know, take a year off from school and try to work, get my foot in the door with some people in some places, or am I just going to jump right into a master's? And I think that's just like, I have not made any progress with that. And I think it's just because there's so many on top of the aspects that are already in front of me. It's also like outside factors like chiming into where I'm like, okay, well, I have to think about my family, I have to think about, you know, what's best for me and like my future. So yeah, that's been a big outside stressor for sure.
Yeah, I know going into like the future, thinking about masters or jobs or just figuring out where you want to live can be stressful. I would recommend that right now, like at this time right now, focus on your finals, finishing out your credits, and then maybe like over this winter break, that's when you could possibly like look up jobs, look up where master programs are, stuff like that. But I think prioritizing finals and like finishing your credits would be like a good way to like even cope with stress. Like just get like coping with stress could even be just getting rid of other stressors so that it's not as overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that can be really stressful like for the future, but I think right now kind of just focus on the present of your senior year. And then maybe when you have breaks, or like even when you have like a little like spring break, like that's when you could like get in contact with people. I know, like you said, your sisters like are in school. Like in the last session, you're mentioning how your sisters are in school or have jobs in like Maryland. Like you could see if you can get in touch. Like I'm sure they know people through like different programs and stuff. Also to mention, like we have professors here who could help you find like good master programs, even if you were saying, oh, like could you help me see if there's like a program in Maryland. Like there's so many people that know people that they could go through. So I feel like that is something to stress about in the future, but I feel like right now you should really focus on like finals, finishing out senior year, be excited for graduation, be excited to like move on, like get out of here and like have a new place to settle down and stuff like that. But I think overall you've done a lot better with planning out your schedule and not being too overwhelmed doing like certain things at certain times, and then just knowing like your resources around you. Like, you know, you have different students, different teachers, like even people at home, friends that could help you like not feel as stressed, or like even just help you with like studying for finals and stuff like that. So I feel like the transition from coming home to here is hard. And if you realize that like you like to be home more, then like maybe after college, like, oh, you go home for a little bit and like see like that could help you. That could help like stress like be decreased, you know what I mean? Like you won't be as stressed. But I think you've done a lot better from our last session when we met, talking about like just being overwhelmed. Is there anything else like you just feel like you're stressed about? Like I feel like you've done a lot better. You have a lot of resources, like different coping strategies.
I think other than, and I'm glad we like touched on it during this session, was kind of like, I think right now it's just my issue of just like being present like here and now. And although I know I need to prioritize like those things coming up in like the future, I do think like I've invested too much of my time trying to prioritize that over like what needs to be prioritized right now. And like what you said, like it is finals, it is, you know, finishing out like my bachelor's and whatnot. So I think I'm glad that we acknowledge that, and I hope we can touch on that in the future, just to kind of like track my progress. But I think those are probably the biggest things that I think I'm stressing about, because anything outside socially, I'm fine, but it's all just to do with like academics and like those big life choices. Like these are probably like one of the first like big and like impactful life choices I'll be making. So
yeah, I think we have made a lot of progress from our last meeting. And obviously, if anything else comes up, reach out. Feel free. We can set up another time to meet. But I think just prioritizing like the now is really important, just because you are about to take that big step in life of moving out and finishing college, finding a job, doing a master's. So I think just focusing on this right now, also like thinking about that as well, but making sure you can get everything done now would be really helpful, just so you don't stress out about two different things at the same time. If anything, put one before the other so it's not as overwhelming.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I think you've been doing good.
Thank you.
Good job planning.
Thank you.